Hello, I'm Dr. Manpreet Dhuffar-Pottiwal. I am a psychologist and specialise in behavioural addictions and intergenerational trauma.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ravi Gill. I'm a chartered health psychologist and practitioner psychologist. Mental health, South Asian community, we know this is a big factor. In your experience, where do you think you see the biggest traps in terms of our cultural expectations?
I think there's this pressure, especially for men, to embody the strong, silent provider. What are your thoughts on that?
I think for sure. I think if we then think about the blended nature within our families and communities as it is, it's not having the clear defined roles. So if we think about, and this is obviously perhaps more your topic than mine, but just of that multi-generational living and how you can adopt. You can go from being a son in one room to then being a father in another room and then perhaps being a brother in another room. It's, do you even know, or is there even an awareness that you're going through these different rooms, switching off one side of your brain, going into another, and the emotional capacity that it takes out of you? And I think that's not spoken about enough. Nowhere even an awareness.
And reflecting on identity. What does it mean to become a father?
Yeah.
What does it mean to be in the same home that you grew up in, the family you came from, and now being with a partner and the children, the family you've created? And I feel that men often are burdened with the language as well, that crying is weak or a sign of weakness. You have to be a provider. And it's almost like we need a digital update of our brains to say that we're safe, and yet somehow we can't embody that safety because of previous patterns or intergenerational trauma in real time, right?
Yeah. But I also think there's within like the friendship circles and things like that, if there isn't even an awareness that it's happening, it's also then, like you said, the language not being present, but do you even have the space to process it internally? So if we think about the idea of South Asian men going to therapy, the amount of conversations that I've had with people, and they're just like, no, my husband won't go to therapy. And it gets to like a crisis point where they would even consider it. But it's very much viewed that talking therapies is very much a westernized thing. And the idea of going to therapy means that something really bad has to happen before we even get to that stage. And I think we really need to scale it back and normalize it of, this is just something that people do, and it's something that's so helpful. And it brings in that sense of awareness and almost challenging the idea of, why aren't we creating the conversation of it's okay to talk about it and normalize it? The same way that women do. We openly talk about going from, like the transition from going from becoming a mother and the matrescence that we go through, the emotional changes, the hormonal changes. And with men, we don't really talk about it enough until we get to that crisis point. And it's that, postpartum depression in fathers. That's a huge topic. And I would say even more so within male mental, like with South Asians, but it's not, definitely not even spoken about, nowhere near enough.
Yeah. And even when we think about therapy, it doesn't have to be therapy.
No.
Right? It just starts with a conversation.
Yeah.
And the conversation can just be as simple as, I don't know what's going on with me, but I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah. Something's off.
Yeah.
But you could perhaps see that more in any kind of behaviours. What behaviours would you look out for?
I think masking, because secrecy, when we add in the behavioural addictions aspect and we add in just addictions in general, which are most prominent in Punjabi communities.
Yes.
There's a lot of masking, but there's also a lot of suppression of emotions as well, which can come out through controlling behaviours. That can come out because there is a lot of power in patriarchy too. So aligning with those behaviours means that they have more access, power and control, but also inhibits them at the same time.
It's limiting them essentially, isn't it? So it's not really playing a powerful tool.
Some of my research in British Punjabi men who live in multi-generational households has really picked up this idea of the collectivist values.
Okay.
And that on one hand, I went in with this insider knowledge, knowing that I was a female and asking these uncomfortable questions and expecting and even having a previous judgment that, they're going to be struggling. It's going to be difficult for them. But actually, what they showed me is that there is a lot of power in the collectivist as well. Because on one hand, we can say multi-generational living is inhibiting.
Okay.
It downsizes our personality.
Yeah.
But at the same time, sorry, I need to get that bit wrong. It doesn't downsize our personality. What the hell?
Well, you can. If I was thinking more of it, if it limits your personality because you're not able to grow and develop.
Because you're growing up in collectivist.
So essentially, it is downsizing, because if you're never able to fully step into each role authentically, then in actual case, it is downsizing.
Yeah. And then we go on to those collectivist values. You know, when we talk about the space of British Asians within the UK, we know that British Punjabis and British Indians in particular, in terms of economically, own more houses. Yet somehow we're still bound to filial piety.
Yes.
Cultural obligations that, despite economic advancement
and growth,
and education and privilege, we still continue to live in this way.
So we limit ourselves, essentially, isn't it? The culture allows for the narrative of to shrink yourself small to belong to the wider.
Yeah.
If it's
then we also acculturate
to that
and assimilate, because that dual representation of our personalities means, unlike our Muslim and Bengali counterparts, we will be seen in pubs.
Yeah.
With the British Indian, you will be seen in certain spaces where you can have more networks and more conversations. Yes. But no one would know that you're living in a multi-generational home and that you might be living with 12 people.
Yeah. 12 people,
and we're able to conceal that quite well as well.
Yeah.
We essentially can have 3 or 4 generations living in one home.
So why do you think we don't talk about it enough? Because if you think about today's economic situation, the fact that it's harder to get on the property ladder, the fact that it's a lot more expensive and people are struggling, why is it still that we don't celebrate the fact that we live in a multi-generational home? Why is it still something that we hide
Well,
behind?
I guess one thing is that we've got exposure to the Western value, which is individualistic.
Yeah.
It promotes individualistic. Like, we just think about therapy, right?
Yeah.
We can laugh about it and say, oh, therapy is the way.
Yeah.
But why would a South Asian man from a collectivist culture come to therapy when someone is going to just say set boundaries? How can you set boundaries that's a very individualistic way of looking, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the most colonized way of looking at family systems, that you have to set boundaries but in a multi-generational home and from a collectivist culture, you're not teaching repair. Boundaries teach cut off.
Yes.
Here, we're teaching repair. The decolonized way of working with South Asian men is that you can still be your authentic self whilst living in a multi-generational home. Because the other layer that he has to uniquely navigate is being the mediator between his parents and his children and his wife.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
But it's not spoken about enough. Like I said, for women, when you speak to women and they have various support groups and online, there's like a massive space where this is spoken about, and yet it's rarely considered for men. And you think actually it's an even bigger issue for them.
But maybe they don't have to reflect on their identities in the same way. With women, we've been taught from the day we're born that the house that we're living in isn't our house. Then we go to our in-laws' house and they tell us that's not your house either. Where is our home? So we go on this quest of finding what home means, whether it's an internal one or it's a physical home. Whereas I think with men, often they do always feel at home.
They have a space.
They've got that space. So they don't really question it, but also they're taught not to question it.
Yeah, the culture says don't ask questions, you've got it, that's it.
And if you've only been exposed to one way, your wife comes along, shows you another way,
you're like, what
it's going to be quite hard to catch on, right? And I think there's a lot of compassion on that part as well. But then this is where weaponized incompetence comes in as well.
Yeah, you allow that behaviour to continue.
And the common narrative of why a lot of men do end up getting married is because the mum's had enough of doing their cooking and cleaning and they've gone, here you go.
Someone else
hand
can
him
do
to
it.
someone else.
Yeah.
But if a man has never had a blueprint of a marriage where actually...
No, but it's not just the marriage. I literally think it's just adult responsibility. If you don't know how to navigate your way through life, just within your own kind of... Then what's the point?
But at the same time, we can't negate the fact that our parents have had arranged marriages.
Yeah. We come from a generation.
We've got a generation of arranged marriages, and this is where caste plays a huge role.
Communication is non-existent.
And even caste, because when we think about endogamy, that promotes that we stay within castes.
Yep.
And now we've moved out of castes as well.
There's multi-faith, there's multi-caste.
There's multi-faiths, multi-caste. And
the Asian blending.
But that brings a whole load of...
What does this mean? I think it just makes people question, and then that safety element, perhaps.
I agree. Yeah. And even just looking at social structures, the hierarchy is that you stay within and you marry within. Yeah. And a lot of us have gone and changed that. But the integration into another family is also very difficult. Yeah. And equally for the men too. Yeah. Because they're navigating a different culture, a different caste partner, a different religion partner in the home they've been brought up with, and then also mediating that as well. Yeah. But also we want to think about divorce. Yeah. Separation.
A lot more common now than when we sure were growing up. Yeah. And it's a lot more normalized. And I think for me, it's like whenever I work with a client within therapy, they're not afraid to say that word out loud. Whereas before it's like, what do you mean? They're like, it didn't work out. And you're like, so you're divorced. Like, or we've just separated. No, but legally on paper, it means a divorce. And, the terminology and what that means. And the fact that people are not hiding from it as much. I recently had a client who walked in and said, right, got married, got divorced after 3 years, it didn't work out, we just weren't compatible, and then quickly went into another part of her story. And I thought, that's the first time I've heard somebody say it with such power, that she hasn't let it define her. I think a lot of people that have unfortunately been through that stage go to a place where my divorce has defined me and now I have to rebuild my identity from that. No, yes, there is an opportunity to rebuild, but it's not something that you need to recover from. It's just recognizing actually that didn't work out for many reasons and move on.
What do you think about men and neurodiversity in South Asian households?
Oh, I think it's huge. I think there is a common genetic pattern, behavioral pattern, but I think the culture allows for us to mask those behaviors. When you spoke about the household tasks and not knowing how to use a washing machine or even like washing the dishes, we think, oh yeah, it's very much a woman's job. Not anymore. That's absolutely not a woman's job. But if you've never been taught those things, you just think, yeah, they're not quite good with it. But that could actually be masking a neurodiversity, because if you think about the emotional processing, the executive functioning, can I even set this task? Do I know how to set a timer? What does this mean? That forward planning, prioritizing tasks, all of that is very much consistent with a neurodiverse presentation, but it's being masked by a patriarchal society that says that's not your job. Yeah. It's really hard.
So often when we talk about intergenerational trauma, so some of the psychological ways in which intergenerational trauma might impact men more significantly is that they have legacy burdens from their fathers and their forefathers.
Okay. Just because when I think of intergenerational trauma, I think historically partition and the emotional baggage trauma that we've carried with us. And I think of it as this pressure of, if I've come all of this way across the land and we need to build something and like that legacy piece. But I think since then we've moved on a great way, and the trauma piece now looks really, really different. Absolutely. I think the landscape of trauma has completely changed, but it's not just the family trauma. I think it's also wider society with what's going on. And it's interesting to think about what you said to me last year about the riots that happened and how unsafe you felt in your hometown, which I think is just wild.
And it's phenomenal because 45 years ago, my dad had migrated into this country, and then the riots in Southall had kicked off, and they were going on in the 70s. And we think that we've come a long way. Southall was a very safe, you were West London as well, and very safe to be brought up in. You know, they protested and, you know.
They protected their space, right? Yeah.
But then, for some that manifested into addiction. Yeah.
Coping strategy.
Because they never spoke about it. My dad never spoke about it. Yeah. I only found out about it on the documentary in Defiance last year, right? The Channel 4 documentary. And then we had like another whole circle of it last year, and now being in Bristol, so during the summer holidays, having to explain to my children why we cannot go to certain parks because of the colour of our skin. Yeah. And then having to have conversations,
which you probably never thought you'd have, right?
With work,
in your own situation.
To say, I don't feel safe coming in. Yeah. In Bristol, where I would say is relatively safe, and although they put up like an anti-protest, I feel like I may have felt what my dad felt when he was in his 20s.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, so for you to grow up thinking, oh, we've moved past that, never would you have thought that I'd have to have that conversation with your own children, right? It's bizarre.
Yeah. And also, you add that into technology.
Yeah.
Our traumas are also vicarious.
Yeah, for sure.
We're picking up from political spaces, everything that's going on. It's wiring our brains, but also giving us really huge emotional responses that are disproportionate.
Yeah, it's creating a place of nowhere is safe. Even though it's something that's on a video.
And then you take that into something much smaller, like imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
What's the narrative that a man might have been passed on from his dad and his granddad?
That you're not
I
good
don't
enough.
belong.
Yeah, yeah.
So they go into a workplace despite being very successful, despite having an absolute right to be there.
Yeah.
But the narrative is I don't belong.
Yeah. And that feel of threat.
Yeah. So even though his journey might not be of, you know, the way he had a migration journey, someone else did.
Yeah. But it's the stories that you've been told from
and
that.
And then this is where epigenetics come in as well, where although intergenerational trauma can not change our genes, DNA, it does change gene expression.
Yeah. And it can come up and make you more susceptible to anxiety,
to depression and
even that neurodiverse presentation
absolutely,
that we see.
Absolutely. And I do wonder how much neurodiversity is hidden in South Asian communities because it's often seen as a white
I mean, I think if we think about the challenge that we've had to even talk about mental health within South Asian, when we think about South Asians and neurodiversity, I even feel that topic is at least 5 years behind. I don't even feel we're anywhere near it. If we think about the way that the community perhaps deal with, and I say deal with in a very light-hearted way, but if we think about learning difficulties and how they are accepted within the community and the way in which they're spoken about, adding neurodiversity to the mix culturally, I don't think we can cope. We don't understand what that means for us.
Absolutely not. And then you add in, you know, coming back to that aspect of why a man might not go to therapy. It's because he ends up with the GP first, and the GP prescribes antidepressants.
Yeah, it's that masking behaviour.
So that gets further masked, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whether it's neurodiversity. There's no actual outlet. It just cuts off the emotions even more by taking antidepressants.
Because the communication and the language there to explain what's going on, if something's not quite right, not quite sure what it means, you think, actually, let's dig a little bit deeper. What doesn't feel right? Is it this particular task? Is it this particular situation? And even, you know, GPs limited times, they don't have the space to be able to explore.
And a lot of trauma is attributed to physical pain, so they'll look for physical ailments for it too.
For sure.
The
psychosomatic nature of trauma in the brain and the way that we process all of that carries a massive weight. So right, now if we were to think about, we know what we know about our men, and I say that in a collective way. If we were to start thinking about, we know that they're not going to go to therapy, we know the language isn't there within the culture. If we wanted to try to redefine their masculinity in a healthy way, which is pro-mental health, in your opinion, with your research, what do you feel that landscape could look like? Where do you feel it needs to start?
Well, I think, firstly, it's healthy, humorous, and real to just acknowledge. Like, why not look at it through playfulness? Like, life doesn't have to be so serious. Like, therapy sounds so serious. But we can do this playfully. And I think the first one is, it's uncomfortable, but it's with a real critical self-reflection and awareness. And it is time to take a good look in the mirror and ask ourselves those really, really tough questions. What does being a man really mean to me?
Okay. So like aligning with your intrinsic values and moral code.
And is it okay to cry during sad movies? Something as simple as like that, you know. But I think there's a spoiler alert here as well. Yes, it is okay. It
is. Showing your feelings doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you.
Absolutely.
Certainly not a sign of weakness. If anything, from a therapeutic point of view, being able to show your emotions mean that there is a human there behind you. There's that connection with your emotions.
And it's kind of moving all away from that tough, stoic exterior and saying, actually, I can understand and redefine masculinity on my own terms.
And what that looks like for me. So I was thinking about, you know, the research that Fred Siegel done about name it to tame it. If we don't have the language to appropriately label all of the emotions that we feel, and if it's masked with, I'm having a bad day or I'm just tired, if we're actually able to say, I'm having a shit day or I feel angry because of this, then we're able to understand our emotions a bit better and then think about, what do I need to do to try and manage this or help myself feel better in this moment?
And same with values.
Yeah.
Right? When we think about values-based living,
Yeah.
the word values thrown around so many times, but it doesn't mean you can't come at it with a creative element. And for me, one of them is going through core identity by using the tree of life.
Yeah.
Because the tree of life is a methodology rooted in narrative therapy.
Yep.
It's non-shaming. It doesn't
It's just
re-traumatize.
explorative. Yeah,
it's explorative, and most importantly, it's creative, because a lot of us
have to think beyond the trees. Yeah.
And we've forgotten how to play.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really even just coming down to, and again, people think, what?
Yeah.
But what does your name even mean?
Yeah, connecting.
What does your name mean? What is that in your identity? You've been given a name. Have you ever even reflected on what your name means?
Wow, yeah, that's true.
And how do you carry that forward? Just even something being given to you, like within those stressors or within those things that are difficult, the gifts coexist.
Yeah.
So it's there's a duality to all of us. Whether we call it a duality, whether we call it a shadow side, or whatever we have both at the same time, and that's what makes all this so much more complex, right?
Because it's understanding the relationship of both running in parallel.
Yeah. So I can be oppressed and privileged at the same time.
For sure. Yeah.
And again, complex.
So you can be sad and happy within the same moment because of the multiple spaces that you come in at.
But again, that starts in our formative years when you're cut off from expressing emotion because sometimes it's too much for your parents.
Yeah.
They either bribe you with something, go away.
Or you're seen and not heard.
Yeah. But that's a narrative we all have of South Asians. I think irrespective of it being men or women, children should be seen and not heard. So when you don't fit the status quo, what happens?
You're a troublemaker.
You're a troublemaker. You get labelled.
But then that, again, presents within neurodiversity when people don't have that understanding of the processes that are going on or the way that you think and understand the emotions. It's you're a troublemaker. And within class, I remember in primary school, you would have the naughty table or the naughty children would get sent to another class. And you think, actually, is there something else going on because they don't find it stimulating
So
enough?
we also have to take into consideration schooling here as well.
That's it.
And what happens with South Asian men because they can't sit still for too long or often. And we can talk about in our day for sure, it might not apply to the next generation, but some of those boys were being hit at home.
Yeah. There was
so how could they sit still?
Yeah.
They've been physically abused at home as well.
It wasn't enough, that pressure.
But so I think I have a huge sensitive, a huge soft spot for male mental health because, I don't know. Why? Why do I?
They're a lost generation and they need our help. But without being the rescuer, if that makes sense, within the drama triangle. It's just, don't forget about the boys.
Yeah. I'm also raising 2 boys as well.
So then
and I think it's more important for the close men for me to do the work than it is my boys because they won't have to then. Yeah.
It's putting in the work now.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram as the Dr. Dr. And you can find my TED Talk on YouTube, which is called Understanding Your Intergenerational Burdens and Gifts.
You can find me on social media on Instagram as Dr. Ravi_Gill. You can also find my website, which is www.smartmindhealth.co.uk. This has been our podcast with MindFriend. They are an educational digital platform combating misinformation of mental health through accredited professionals.
Keep an eye out for our upcoming content.